The Innovators Network.
Welcome to the Killer Innovation Show, the longest continuously produced podcast in history. Each week, Phil McKinney brings you the insights and strategies to amplify your creativity and innovation skills. Here's your host, Phil McKinney.
Hello and welcome. I'm Phil McKinney. This week, we are reaching deep into the archive and bringing you one of our most downloaded shows. Enjoy.
This episode is sponsored by Zoom. With Zoom, you can streamline your communication, collaboration, and creativity all in one place. Zoom is the market-leading platform that provides video meetings, voice, webinars, and chat across desktops, phones, tablets, and conference room systems. To learn more about Zoom and sign up for your free account, visit killerinnovations.com/Zoom.
Inspiration comes from a variety of different inputs. For me, it's primarily visual and audio. Visual breaks down into, I'm very visually oriented. I started off going to college wanting to be an architect. I'm also an amateur photographer. And I read a lot. And I also, though, listen a lot. Obviously, podcasts are a big part of my life, given that we started this podcast back in 2005, but I'm also a big consumer of audible books. So the question is, as you get all of this input, what do you do from it? Now, in the past, I used to be a big reader of magazines. If you were to go back and read some of my early writings, I talk about how I was able to consume so many magazines. Had a subscription to about 125, 130 magazines. I had them stacked up over the house, but I also had just this innate ability of pattern recognition. So I would flip through a magazine, read a really interesting article, and for some reason my brain would be able to find that article by the graphical image of the cover page and the ad that was closest to the article. Don't ask me why that works for me, but that's what worked for me. It was, for some reason, that graphical, the cover image, and whatever ad, the image of the ad closest to the article in the magazine, equipped me to be able to go find it. Now, I also read a lot of books. I've got books all over the place. The challenge being is I'll write in the books. I'll write notes. I'll write comments. I'll write question marks. Again, more input. But how do you organize it? How do I make it so that it is retrievable? How to make it useful rather than I wrote some good stuff in a book, stuck it back up my bookshelf, and then what do you do with it? So to make it useful, it comes down to a couple fundamental things. Capturing it, organizing and structuring it, and then finding and recall. So I've got to capture it while I'm reading it or listening to it. How do I capture that nugget or that piece of information? How do I organize it? How do I structure it? And then how do I make it easy to recover? Now, for me, the content that I capture and put into whatever system I use, that's content that I use for these shows, writing content for the shows, doing 45, 50 shows a year for 15 years. That's a lot of shows for content. I also use it for content or inspiration for my blog, for innovations I'm working on, ideas that are kind of percolating around. The next book. Yes, I'm working on a new book. I've been saying that for a long time. I still have flashbacks of how hard it was to do the first book. But I think I'm starting to get a little bit of energy behind going out there and capturing the content for a new book. And then courses and workshops. I have an upcoming course at CSU that I'm working on disruptive innovation. So I'm using the tools and processes that I'm sharing with you today on how do I create these courses and workshops. Now, The real challenge for me is I've tried a bunch of tools, but no single tool really works. It doesn't solve it. You're not going to find that magic one tool that allows you to bring all this together. Now, I've tried many tools. I've tried Evernote. Still a big Evernote user from way back, but I find that once you get information into Evernote, it's hard to retrieve. It's hard to get out. Moleskin notebooks. You've seen me. I've shared them on the show. If you've met me in person, you know I always carry one in my bag. I always have my Moleskin notebook for the capture. But again, I've got Tupperware tubs full of notebooks over my career. And I periodically go back and scan them and see if there's something in there that might be more appropriate. The timing is better now for that idea, but that still is a process. So I sat back probably over the last 6 months or so and challenged myself to find the right tools and put them together in a workflow that allows me to capture the input, allow me to organize it, and make it very easy to retrieve it. To use these items, these things I capture, these images, these articles, these things out of books, these things in podcasts, as my input, as my inspiration for my creativity. So, some of the criteria that I set for myself, the things that I defined as being important for me for the selection of the tools I would use are: it must be able to be usable on a mobile phone and a desktop. Now, in the case of the mobile phone, I carry both an Android phone and an iPhone. Don't ask, read my history, listen to previous shows, you'll figure out why I do that. So I carry both an Android and an Apple phone, and then I have my desktop. So I carry an HP Z Create mobile workstation with a dream screen on it. Fantastic product, by the way, if you're a videographer or photographer. So those are kind of the tools that I carry. Now, in addition, I do carry an iPad Pro, which is a great platform when I'm traveling to do just quick notes on airplanes, those types of things. So that's basically anything I do has to be able to work both in mobile and in the desktop. I need tools that can collect from all of my inputs, from books, from podcasts, from digital magazines, from websites I visit, from emails I get. I need to be able to have tools that can collect all of that. I need to be able to organize with minimal of the manual steps. As I said, I'm a big Evernote user. I've got this hierarchical kind of tagging system that I use that I have to scroll down and select that specific tag. And if you miss one or you don't tag something, you kind of lose that connection. So I was looking for something that didn't require as much of that manual. It needs to adapt as content focus shifts. I mean, for today, for instance, you look at my content pool of input, a lot of it's going to be around ethics, ethical innovation. I've been writing about it. I've been talking about it a lot lately. I think it's important. It's kind of an area of focus for me right now. But in an area that has been important for me in the past, it kind of waned a little bit, but now it came back into the forefront probably in the last year and a half or 2 years, is the digital divide. How do we address the ability for people who don't have access to technologies and broadband services, and what should we do about that? And I and a team are working on ideas around the digital divide. So as those topics and focus areas shift, I need an environment that can shift with it and adapt to its structure and how it organizes information. Also, I need something that I can easily find that piece of information that I want without knowing the exact words. I don't want to have to remember all the taggings and those types of things that I've used. I need it to be able to self-structure, self-organize, and again, adapt as my information needs change. And the last part, which I kind of put into my criteria list, and I wasn't quite sure how I was going to address it, is around serendipity. When you find that random piece of information that you go, whoa, I wasn't expecting that, but boy, that really generates a spark. That's a kind of a connection that I hadn't anticipated. It's kind of like those recommendation engines, like for movies or whatever, and a movie pops up and you go, wow, I didn't even know about that movie, but for some reason it made the connection and I get this serendipity effect. So these are the criterias that I set. Mobile and desktop needs to collect all of my inputs. It needs to organize it in such a way that it's minimal. I don't have to do a lot of setting it up. It needs to adapt as the content focus shifts, as it moves around. It needs to allow me to easily find the information without doing kind of a complex Boolean search criteria. And it has to create some form of effect of serendipity. It presents information to me that I hadn't really thought about, or that I had forgotten that I had even collected that piece of information years and years ago. And so what is it that I use? Well, what are the tools that I have put together? Some of them I've been using for quite some time. Some of them are relatively new to my workflow. So what I'm going to share with you today is the tools and the workflow I use. This is what I use every day, right? So this will give you at least some peek under the hood of how I collect up and sort through and identify, and in many cases, share in the form of my podcast, share in the form of my blog writing, my articles on Medium, or just little snippets that I put up on social media. So what is it that I do? So first off is as you know, I've been a big user of Moleskine for quite some time. I've got literally thousands of these Moleskine notebooks all over the place, and I wouldn't even want to calculate how much money I've spent on Moleskine. But recently I've shifted to a new tool, and that new tool is a Remarkable tablet. Now, and in fact, today for this show, I'm actually have written out the entire show script on my Remarkable tablet. So Remarkable tablet is an e-ink display. It very, very thin, acts like a tablet. You have a pen. You can write on that very easily. You can erase whatever you've written very easily. It is like paper. Now, for me, this has been, at least to this point, given my use of it, has really been a breakthrough. Keeps all of my information together. It also will export that automatically to my mobile phone and to my desktop. So I have an image of it. Now, Remarkable also will do handwriting to text. Not all that great. I'm not using that feature. But for me, I'm very visually oriented, so I will sketch and draw and those kinds of things. So this is one input that I'm working on where I'm sketching out an idea or whatever. This is the device I am using. I'm using a Remarkable 2. I haven't had it all for that long, probably for the last 6 weeks or so. But I'm telling you, I love it. It's an e-ink display. Battery goes. I've gone a couple weeks between charges. The writing feel on it makes it feel just like paper. You can't tell the difference, that it's not paper. And from that, it has really become the replacement for me having all these Moleskine notebooks to have to go back. Because again, I can easily export any and all documents from the Remarkable onto my iPhone, onto my Android, or onto my desktop PC. And that again is input that downstream in my workflow can become important. Now, one of the things though that other inputs, rather than me just writing on my Remarkable tablet, is all of the information that I read. And where I read that from is from a variety of RSS news feeds. Now, if you've been using RSS news feeds, this is basically your ability to get automatic updates whenever websites digital magazines or whatever, update their content. It will alert you to new articles, new posts, those kinds of things. Now, in my case, I am a big user of Feedly. I shifted to Feedly after Google Reader stopped being available. Google took the Google Reader down, and that's when I shifted to Feedly. Now, at first, I just used it as a normal RSS feeder, but in the last 6 months or whatever, I stepped up. I bought the top end offering from Feedly, primarily to get access to its AI engine, and its AI engine allows for for me to train it not just on my feeds, but feeds at that Feedly sees in order to find and surface articles. And it isn't just a keyword, find something that says innovation or something that says creativity. It is one that is very trainable. You can put in concepts, and it knows how to interpret a sentence to see if the concept is being addressed or talked to. And I'm still working on that training. It takes time. It is an investment. But with Feedly, I literally have hundreds, if not thousands, of RSS news feeds that come in here. And you can categorize them on things like architecture and design, innovation. And in the case of innovation, I can take information and that matches that criteria, and now I've got all these articles. Now, what's interesting, when you look at Feedly, it actually tells you how long ago the article came in. So, was it the last less than an hour, within the last hour, last couple of hours? So you also kind of know the timeliness of the information that you are getting. So Feedly is a great aggregator. Now, what I do is everything in the feed that I want to keep. So if I said, here's an article that's 3 steps to consolidation of new innovations. So once I pick that, then what I do is I actually save it to Pocket. So I'll just click through, boom, it is now over in Pocket. And now I go through and I can go down and read more and more articles. Literally every day I'm scanning probably 500, 600 articles a day. And these are just the ones that Feedly bubbles up. It's not everything Feedly is seeing from all of my feeds, but through my training of the AI engine, it's getting better and better and better of highlighting the articles that I truly want to see and need to read, etc. And then again, once I identify that, send it off to Pocket. Now, Feedly is where I can get all of the information around news feeds, RSS feeds, etc. But that's not my only source of information. Another source of information that I get is with my Kindle. So in this case, my Kindle Oasis. So in this case, the Kindle Oasis, the latest Kindle. I used to carry books with me. Authors who appear on my podcast will send me books. I got hardbound, softbound books coming out my ears. I am literally running out of room. And I'm shifted pretty much everything onto the Kindle. Why? Because in the case of Kindle, I can do things like I can identify text that I want to highlight. I can highlight it. And great, it's highlighted in the Kindle. However, in a minute, I'm going to show you that with highlighting in the Kindle, it actually will feed downstream automatically into my workflow, which is critical. Because otherwise, I've got hardbound books with highlighters and pens, and I wrote in the margins and those types of things, and I lose it. In this case, with this highlighting, I actually capture it while I'm reading it, knowing that that's automatically going to feed into my workflow and will become a captured input for future inspiration or future information for my writing or my books or whatever the case might be. So I've gone pretty much all digital now for my books using the Kindle Oasis. Now, the other pieces of my input also includes podcasts. Now you're going, how in the heck do you capture content on a podcast? Well, the way I can do that is through an app. Unfortunately, today it is only available on iPhones, called Air. So it's AIRR. And Air will actually allow you to capture a snippet. So you load your podcast, all your podcast feeds into Air. You're listening to your podcast like you normally would. But if you heard something that you're really interested in, one button, one touch to the screen, and it captures, and you can set how much you want to capture, how far back do you want it to go, and how long do you want that listen to be. And now you've captured that snippet out of that podcast. And so this is the way. Otherwise you're trying to write a note, you're in the car, you're out hiking or jogging. How do you capture something you heard on a podcast that you absolutely love and you want to use it as an inspiration or triggered an idea for you, whatever? So in that case, then you want to be able to capture that. Now, another tool, which I also use, that's kind of tied into this a little bit, is Otter AI. Now, in the case of Otter AI, it's voice recognition, but it's voice recognition to transcription. So you can use that for meeting notes. I'm experimenting with it to capture brainstorming, ideation sessions, where you've got 2, 3, 4, 5 people all riffing off each other, putting out ideas. The hard part is how do you capture all that? We are experimenting with Otter AI as a tool for capturing of brainstorming. So that is another tool. So the key here is in the case of things like my RSS news feeds, which is by far the largest source of my input. As I shared before, that goes into Pocket. Now, what is Pocket? Pocket is this aggregation of everything that you want to read later, that you want to hold on to and go, I want to read that later. I want to read that at some point and then, spend more time with it. So in this case, if earlier I had highlighted an article called 3 Steps to the Consolidation of New Innovations. It's here in my Pocket app. I can open up that Pocket app, and now I've got the text. Now, in this case, I can do everything from including highlighting that text and then highlighting that. So now it's captured. It's now in Otter. The highlighting is there. And therefore, that identifies and tells Otter that's a piece of information from this article that I want to keep and that I want to be inspired with. And now, great, and I can go through and I do all of this within Pocket from the standpoint of capturing up all that information. I don't spend a lot of time tagging it. I'm just highlighting it because I don't want to have my information scattered across. I'm working you through what my workflow is. All my inputs, Pocket being the way that I can capture websites, I can capture RSS news feeds, etc. into it. But ultimately, everything needs to appear together. I need to start bringing that together. Like, for instance, what do I do with books? How do I bring books together? How do I bring together podcasts, the air, the pieces that are in that? There's a tool that I got introduced to here relatively recently that is the be-all and end-all. And that is an app called Readwise. Readwise collects everything from my Pocket, from my Kindle, from my hardcover books. Yes, it can actually capture your highlighting out of your hardcover books. My podcast in the form of an interface to Air, and it brings it all together. So in this case, the books, everything that's in the Kindle, every highlighting that I do inside the Kindle finds its way automatically into Readwise. Supplemental books, books that I have read, but I didn't read them on the Kindle. I read them hardcover. You can actually tell Readwise that you read that book. And what it does is it actually pulls out the highlighting that people have used in the digital versions of those books. So you can get the collective wisdom of what other people have highlighted. And what I've found is a lot of people highlight the exact same things. So this is a little cheater way to load up all that input from all the previous books that you have ever read. It includes articles, it includes all kinds of things. You can get an input from everything from Instapaper to, in this case, Pocket. I do Medium, Air, Feedly. I can do Feedly directly. Web Highlighter, Apple Books. I can take feeds from Twitter. I can Scribd. I can put PDFs directly in. All kinds of things directly into Readwise. Now, the one thing that I find that really is interesting with Readwise also is the fact that it also percolates up your highlights. It presents things to you that maybe you hadn't thought about, that you hadn't considered. So I can go into all of the articles and look at them this way. But what Feedly does is I can go through and I can tell it that I want to review some more. So it says, okay, you've already done 5. It recommends just 5 a day. I use it as inspiration. So I can say, nope, I want to review more. So it goes out and it starts reading them up. And so, for instance, here's a little highlight that I did out of an article called "What is Responsible AI?" I can say, "Oh, that's a good one. Keep it." I can, so I just go through, and what I find is every once in a while, one of these pops up, and I go, "Wow, I forgot all about it," and it's kind of an inspiration. It reminds me that, whoa, I thought that was important. Maybe that's something about a new article or a new blog post I'm going to write. So Readwise, critically important from that standpoint. And now I've gone through and I've done some additional articles. So Readwise brings it all together. Now you're thinking, okay, that's great. Readwise is great. You can do Boolean searching. Readwise is only preparing the information for what I ultimately am looking for. And what I've done very recently is I have found a new tool called Roam Research. So Roam Research is a tool whereby you can load information into it. It rolls, and I roll everything. It takes everything from Readwise, brings it into Roam, and it automatically organizes it. It creates what's called forward links and backward links. It actually organizes it and makes it so that you can connect not only words, but concepts across all the information. You don't have to organize the hierarchy. You don't have to relate two pieces of information, even though they may not have the same word. Roam does that automatically. So it's self-organizing. It automatically will aggregate and create pages around a topic. When it sees and you've tagged and said, these things are important, it creates a page and it links all that information together, but it also keeps it separate. Hard to describe, but this has been the real breakthrough. For me, I can write once, use in many places. So I will write information into Roam, or I'll put information into Roam, and then when I start working on a show, or start working on an article, or I'm working on a chapter in the upcoming book, I can take those blocks of pieces of information, create an entirely new page just dedicated to a chapter in a book, let's say, bring that all together. Now, I'm not copying and pasting it, so if I modify it, I lose all of that other places. No, if I modify it, it actually cascades all the way through. I'm just collecting a reference to the original piece of information. And through that, I can very quickly, very easily grab all the bits and pieces of input and content and use it then, and then start structuring it for my writing or for a show. It also has a way to visually map and graph your information. Now, I don't use this very often. I don't, but In this case, this is my view of my content map is not all that exciting, but you can see in the maps where the size of the bubbles and the amount of links. You're going, there's kind of a core piece because there's a lot of pieces that are all getting connected. And now, for Roam, it's a web-based tool, does not have an app, but it runs very, very well on mobile phones. So I like I said, this is a relatively new thing for me, and I have absolutely fallen in love with it. And for me, I use it on everything from show content to articles to blogs to books. And I've actually, in the case of mine, I've created even shortcuts. So I have a glossary, for instance, that I have created, which are all the common terms that are used in all of my writings. And so I've created a glossary that includes the term and the definition. So if I go into the glossary and, I click, the word innovation, and then what it does is it picks up all of the other pieces of information that are somehow just attributed to that. It includes expanded concepts, like I'm working on a disruptive innovation course for Colorado State University in Fort Collins that I'll be teaching later this year. But it also pulls out individual terms that are or individual blocks of information that I'm not tagging this, it automatically appears. So from this case, it's telling me from January 3rd or from something here, January 5th, you put this information in that's related to this, and it pulls it all together. So I can go through now and say, which of these blocks are things that I want to pull out, maybe to use in the course or use for an upcoming show, whatever the case might be. And I'm telling you, this has been transformative. Now, Rome Research is not just about information gathering. I also use it for my project work. So, for instance, I can say, here's podcast to-dos. So here's all the upcoming content calendar. Here is, and I lay out all of the content ideas, all the content that are coming up for the upcoming show. And in fact, I've outlined this show in there. It's got checkboxes. You can future date things. So you can use Rome Research also for your to-do. Some people now are referring to Rome Research as a second brain. I don't know if I quite go that far, but let me tell you, it is quite an impressive tool. I'm still working with it. I'm still figuring out all of the feature sets on it, but I can tell you, though, that I am quite happy with it. So let me walk through this again in summary. So for daily inspiration, I need lots of input. I'm working on a lot of projects. You need to feed that subconscious. You need to feed your curiosity. You need to feed that inspiration. How do I do that? One is that I look for daily inspiration. Where do I get daily inspiration? From my Readwise. I'll load up the Readwise on my phone even before I get out of bed while I'm laying there in the morning, and I'll go through and I'll look at the 5 inspirations that Readwise has extracted from all of the input that I've run through it. So it goes through and picks out the things that it thinks might inspire me. And then I'll go into Rome, even on my phone still, and I'll just start clicking links to connect out to clips and articles that I hadn't thought about, or if there's a topic that I'm specifically working on. So for inspiration, that is what I do daily. For daily input to feed the inspiration, I am on Feedly multiple times a day. I scan, read 500 to 600 clips in Feedly each and every day. And I also then do my Kindle, highlighting in the Kindle, and I listen to the podcast. All of that, I'm clicking, it goes directly into Readwise. It goes in, well, I should say, it really goes into Pocket and then goes into Readwise. Ultimately, I want to get everything into Readwise. One, because Readwise is what triggers that serendipity, reveals something that I had not anticipated, and it becomes the launch pad to move all that information into Rome, and Rome, where Rome research then organizes it and makes it retrievable. So the point here is don't get frustrated. You're trying to read, you're trying to capture information. You saw those bits of paper, you got post-it notes all over your desktop. You've got a lot of information. Don't be frustrated. Get organized. Whatever tool set, whatever workflow works for you, that's great. But don't get frustrated. You need inspiration. Inspiration generates ideas. Ideas generate innovations. So again, don't get frustrated. Get organized. Get organized. Find your workflow. How do you get your input? Right? How do you organize that? How do you make it easy to retrieve? And then how do you use it to create that serendipity effect when you need to come up with that idea around a topic or around a problem space or around an industry? So get organized. Get organized. I hope you found this week's episode helpful as you get your inspirations, your ideas, your innovations organized. Don't be frustrated. Get organized. What I shared with you, both in a combination of tools and the workflow, is what works for me. You need to find what works for you. You need to establish whatever it is your criteria is for the selection of the workflow. What is it you're trying to achieve? Now, I know this was very high level. We squeezed all those tools into one episode. But depending on your feedback, I may go into more detail. If people want to see more of the specifics of how I do things and how all that integration works and the setup and all that, let me know. Let me know in the comments, or drop me an email, phil@kellerinnovations.com, and we'll take all that in, and maybe we'll do a future show and go into more detail rather than this high level that I went through today. So, and also what I would ask is like today's show and subscribe. That way you won't miss those future episodes or any of the future episodes that we were coming out with. So help us spread the word. You liking, you subscribing, and you sharing episodes is the best way. Now, for the next few weeks, I will be doing the show from the road. We are taking the bus, the new bus, out on the road. We will be gone for about a month or so. I will be doing shows from the road, so you're not going to want to miss that. So again, subscribe. We're going to be going around the country talking to innovators, seeing what they're up to, seeing if what's going on in their lives, find out what's the roadblocks they're running into and how they come around them, and with what's going on in today's world. This is where human ingenuity bubbles up, and we're solving different kinds of problems today than what we thought we would be even solving even a couple of years ago. So if you want to follow me while we're on the road, or just keep up when we are on the road, the best place to do that is over on Instagram. So just find Phil McKinney, all one word, just like all my other social media places. Find it over on Instagram, follow there. We'll post pictures of what's going on inside the bus, where we're stopped, people that may or may not be interviewed on the bus this time around. But this is the first major trip we're taking out on the new bus. It has its own recording studio. It has full Zoom capabilities built into it. So we're excited to get out there, get on the road, and meet with you and innovators. So if you see us on the road, and you can go over to Instagram, there's pictures of the bus over there, so you know what the bus looks like, so that you can find us. If you see us on the road, honk, wave to us, meet up with us. Would love to it. We're going to be heading south through Texas, over to Florida, up the East Coast, and then back to Colorado. So that's roughly the loop but we don't have set locations. We wake up in the morning and say, where's a good place to stop? What looks like an interesting town that we can drive through to kind of see what they're up to, and stop and talk to people. So again, for the next 4 weeks or so, we're going to be on the road. maybe 5 weeks, depending on the trip. We'll be working from the road. We'll be still producing shows, so you want to subscribe. You're not going to want to miss those. And again, if you want to follow us, follow us on Instagram. That would probably be the best platform. I'll be posting over on Facebook and LinkedIn like I normally do, but the trips in that tend to be a little more personal, so I'll tend to post those over on Instagram. And with that, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us here today. Really appreciate it. We will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Podcasting nonstop since 2005, this has been the Killer Innovation Show on the Innovators Network.
This show is distributed by the Innovators Network. For more information and other great shows and content, visit theinnovators.network.